So let me see this over here. All right, hey everybody. We're going to get started. So my name is Greg. I'm with Phase 2. I'm going to kick us off here, and then in a few minutes I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Sean Moll, who's a strategic lead for OpenPublic and has been for a couple years since OpenPublic was launched as a distribution in March 2011, I think it was. So we're here to talk about designing OpenPublic 1.0, which basically means that we want to walk you through some of the design thinking that's gone into creating that distribution over the last 2 years, but we're really going to focus most on the last 9 months or so and some of the things that we've been doing to push OpenPublic in a direction to support multi-site architectures and the ability to manage and maintain a large portfolio of sites across the enterprise. So before we jump in, I do want to plug a BOF that we're going to do right after this, so Birds of the Feather, for OpenPublic and really just managing government websites in general. So that's going to be in the main ballroom.
Grand ballroom.
Grand ballroom. But you can have a few minutes to get lunch. So we'll probably join to do that around 12:15. So I think maybe we'll end here at 11:50, have about 25 minutes or so to do lunch, and then please join us in the Grand Ballroom. So this is the the OpenPublic team at Phase 2 who's responsible for the care and feeding of OpenPublic as a distribution. So Sean and I are here, but there's this team of folks back at Phase 2, and then there are other other OpenPublic developers as well using that distribution. But everybody on this slide has a certain number of hours per week to look after the distribution and maintain it and improve it and talk to clients. So it's a pretty big investment that we've made in OpenPublic as a company, and certainly something we plan to continue to do. And this team and others has a lot of on-the-ground experience using OpenPublic as a distro, and we have a sort of an active process where we take project experiences and then pull that back into the distro and contribute that back out to the community. So that's the Phase 2 team. Here's what we're going to cover. What is OpenPublic? And then a few other self-explanatory things. Actually, let me pause right there and ask for a quick show of hands of anybody who's familiar with what OpenPublic is as a distribution and generally kind of why it exists. Okay, I see 2 Phase 2 people. Okay, so a few. All right, that's good. Then we'll spend a little time with some basics about OpenPublic, and then Sean's going to get more into some of the advanced features of OpenPublic and where we've been taking it. So quick blurb about Phase 2. We're an 80-person web design strategy development company based in Alexandria, so just a couple miles away across the river. Our headquarters in Alexandria. We have an office in New York City, and then a burgeoning presence in San Francisco. So we work from a high level 4 different markets, so government, federal, state, and local clients, and then we also do a lot of work with media and publishing companies, large commercial enterprise companies, and then not-for-profits and NGOs. So one of the things that I like about that from the government perspective, since that's where I play most at Phase 2, is that it allows us to take some of the best practices and solutions from these other markets and deliver them into government. And OpenPublic is actually a very concrete way that we do that. So if we come up with something that works in another industry, OpenPublic, we can deliver that to government customers through that distribution. So that's who we are as a company. We're here to talk about OpenPublic. So there are 2 other distributions that I'll touch on just very briefly. But if you want to learn more about OpenPublic, particularly since we've got a bunch of folks here who may not know that much about it, you can go to openpublicapp.com. And read about the features and do a download of it, of course. And actually, one of the things we have is a one-click install. So if you click on this red download button at openpublicapp.com, it'll bring up a list of versions of OpenPublic that you can install, the latest of which has a one-click install. In about 10 or 15 minutes, you can just get up and running with a hosted instance with OpenPublic installed. All the demo content comes pre-configured, so it's a really fast way to try out OpenPublic if you haven't seen it before. Or if you're trying to socialize Drupal itself to other folks within your organization who may not be familiar with what Drupal can do. OpenPublic comes out of the box with quite a lot of demo content and demos pretty well. So OpenPublic as a distro has been around for about 2.5 years. It was created in March of 2011, and we've seen about 55,000 downloads or so. It's used across, I've lost count, but I think several thousand sites now, and powers some of the biggest federal websites. And you heard this morning Nikhil Deshpande's pitch about Georgia Gov, so we'll talk a little bit about that. The other 2 distributions that we maintain our Open Atrium. So Open Atrium actually this week was launched in beta format. So that's been around for about 3 years, but Open Atrium 1 has been around for several years, and Open Atrium 2 has just gone through a complete re-architecture. So that's not so much focused on what OpenPublic is, which is public-facing websites. Open Atrium is more focused on team collaboration, intranet type use cases. So you can read more about that at openatrium.com. And then the third distribution that we maintain in phase 2 is OpenPublish, which is a distro of Drupal that's geared toward publishing clients. So one of the things that distro does is it takes large volumes of text content that publishers are trying to manage, ships it over to something called OpenCalais, which is from a company called Thomson Reuters, and that is like an automatic meta tagging engine that helps publishers categorize and tag their content more easily. So that's at openpublishapp.com. But anyway, I'm not going to spend too much time on those other two distros. We're here to talk about OpenPublic. So here are some sort of relevant milestones in the journey to where we are right now. We've lost in our formatting, we've lost some of our lines. I'll try and talk through this. But like I said, OpenPublic was released in 2011, March 2011. And then in late 2011 and through fall of 2012, Ready.gov, FEMA.gov, and DHS.gov were all launched using the OpenPublic distro. And around the same time, the Georgia Technology Authority, which you heard about this morning, OpenPublic was used for Georgia Gov. So 2012 saw a lot of action with OpenPublic. In late 2011, we redesigned the theming layer so that it's fully mobile ready and responsive based on the OpenOmega base theme. And then one of the things that Sean's going to talk more heavily about than I am is what's been going on here over the last 9 months. So I mentioned that that's really what we're going to focus on. There was the Beta 10, which really re-architected OpenPublic to focus more, not so much on building single sites, but building multi-site architectures. And then we are targeting later this year for OpenPublic 1.0. So it's a little bit of a funny thing that we've got all of these sites are built with OpenPublic, these federal sites in Georgia Gov, and it's still officially in beta. There's a reason for that we'll talk about. So here's a quick anatomy of OpenPublic, and this could be used to characterize really a lot of Drupal distributions. But if you're not familiar with what a Drupal distribution looks like, you probably know that Drupal 7 comes out of the box as Drupal core. On top of that, you have a whole host of different contributed modules that you can layer on top of Drupal core. So one of the things that OpenPublic does is try and lower the barrier for people who want to get using Drupal in government by packaging in some of the modules that tend to reflect best practices around security and mobility and accessibility. So that's what's going on at this module layer. Above that in OpenPublic is this thing called features-based architecture, which basically means, like, as an example, at Georgia Gov, one of the things that Nikhil talked a little bit about this morning was the ability to manage a single code base. In their case, they've got multiple databases. But with features, you can deploy various types of functionality that can be used in different agencies, and they can just be turned on as needed. So you can manage that in a single code base, deploy it out for different parts of your organization to use, rather than them having to reinvent those wheels, that they can just deploy it as features. And then above that, you have the theming layer. So I mentioned that we're based on a responsive, mobile-ready theme, OpenOmega. So that's kind of the layer cake version of what's going on within OpenPublic as a distribution. So pretty consistently, we see people using OpenPublic in different ways. One of the easiest things for people to use is just to download OpenPublic and host it either on their own web server or do that one-click install that I talked about. And that just gets you up and running with a nice, beautiful Drupal site right out of the box. So if somebody is new to Drupal, wants to give it a spin, or wants to evangelize Drupal or open source in their agency, this is a great way to do it. I'm probably a little bit biased, but I actually think OpenPublic out of the box is one of the best, like, out of the box Drupal sites that's not, what you get when you just download Drupal core, which is a very flexible, powerful engine, but doesn't do a whole lot because it's not tailored to a specific use case. So we also see people using OpenPublic as a template, like, to get started with their project, but then they may veer off of the OpenPublic distro and go down their own path for whatever reason, because their requirements don't necessarily align exactly with OpenPublic. but it allows them to get going in a much faster way. We've seen, saving a couple of weeks of man hours on projects that we've worked with, whereas rather than starting with Drupal out of the box, you can start with OpenPublic and save time out of the gate. Of course, then the last option is using OpenPublic, developing with it, and then staying in line with the distro, so that as improvements are made to OpenPublic, you're not off the reservation, so to speak, and you can benefit from those same improvements that are made to the distro. So these are kind of the different ways that people use OpenPublic. I included a slide on the digital government strategy. This text is shrunk down a little bit, but basically, if you're familiar with the federal government, last May, mid-May of 2012, the federal CIO launched a digital government strategy, which basically put forth a conceptual framework and roadmap and milestones for agencies to improve how they do digital government. So one of the things that's put forth in that digital government strategy is this thing called the shared platform. There are 4 different strategy principles that are laid out in that thing, one of which is shared platform. And really what that is promoting agencies to do is to share best practices and solutions across agencies or even within agencies to help drive down the cost of IT and duplication of solutions across agencies. So we think that OpenPublic is a great example and a great concrete embodiment of what the digital government strategy was talking about when it cites this shared platform concept. So accessibility is another big part of what's addressed in OpenPublic. I've got this slide on Catherine McNally. It's a little bit of a funny slide since her face is so prominently figured, but she's our lead of accessibility at Phase 2. And there's a little interesting story behind. She has sensory disabilities herself. She was actually one of she was the first child at age 3 to get a cochlear implant back in 1986. So she has sensory disabilities and has quite an elaborate system and spreadsheet for looking at accessibility requirements and making sure that those are baked into OpenPublic. So we've lost our spreadsheet here. There we go. So this is just a quick snapshot, kind of a tip of the iceberg, frankly, of different accessibility specs and testing procedures that we go through whenever we implement OpenPublic. And this stuff is baked right into the distro. So as an example, if you're looking at the back end of OpenPublic and you have visual impairment, you can tab around and more readily see what errors are happening on the back end. So there's a lot of accessibility stuff that's built into the distro. And I'm going to close real quick by just mentioning, and Nikhil talked about this quite a bit this morning, OpenPublic was used, as you heard, as the base for the Georgia Gov platform. So it's fully responsive, runs across mobile and tablet, and is a really beautiful site. So, and here is a sample of several state agency sites within the state of Georgia that use the different style tiles, if you heard Nikhil's presentation. So, again, these are all running on the same platform that's based on OpenPublic, but have their own tailored look and feel based on those different style tiles. So each agency can run off of a single platform, but also have its own kind of unique look and feel and experience to the end user. And then finally, this is just a quick excerpt from our own wiki citing an agency stand-up guide. So as new agencies within the state of Georgia come onto the platform, there's kind of a cookbook that they can run through to set up a hosting environment, get things configured, and deploy their state agency site while also being able to customize it. So I think that's my last slide. I'm going to hand it over to Sean to walk through some of the more advanced features of OpenPublic. And by the way, we have some of these. If you're interested in a little swag, I'll put these on front. These are just OpenPublic pamphlets. I'll put them here. And hopefully we'll see you at the bottom. Thanks.
Hey everybody, good morning. I'm told the microphone is right here, and so I should not do my normal wandering through the aisles in the room, so I'm going to stay seated and try and sit up really high so I can make eye contact with all you lovely people. Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome.
So we want to talk about designing 1.0, and one of the things that I want to talk about is what does that actually mean? And I love this this photo, and the caption's actually hidden because we scaled stuff. But what version numbers? What do they mean? This is just a random firmware update screen from 1.0.3 to 1.0.6. And if you've been following OpenPublic for the last 3 years now, kind of feels like that sometimes. Like, oh, I updated my firmware from 1.0.3 to 1.0.6. Everything's working fine. Okay, well, what does that actually mean? And yet firmware is really important. It's the thing that has the software and the hardware on your computer talk to each other. And it actually keeps things running and running smoothly. And in a lot of ways, when we talk about OpenPublic, that's how we think about it kind of internally. Like, we want it to run smoothly, we want it to run well, and these little tiny point upgrades come out. We want them to almost be completely, like, you don't even notice except for that OK button. So then the question becomes, why talk about 1.0 now? And the answer kind of is, we've built a lot of things with it. It's probably overdue. As a matter of fact, we maybe should be calling it 2.0 at this point. There are 754 registered sites, sorry that's obscured up there, just this yesterday, that are running OpenPublic and reporting back that they're running OpenPublic. There are a lot of sites that running or using OpenPublic, as Greg alluded to, that aren't necessarily registered as like official OpenPublic sites. We've had 22,000 downloads of OpenPublic. That's not counting like Pantheon and other great hosting providers that host OpenPublic themselves and do one-click installs. And we've come a long way. We've actually succeeded quite a bit in our original goals. So essentially we want to call it and say, you know what, we've built thousands of sites, we've done it, let's wrap this thing. And the other thing we want to do, as Greg alluded to, is we started to do a re-architecture, kind of a 2.0, a rethinking of what we were doing, without changing the feature set, without changing the out-of-box demo experience, but trying to stick to our original goals and take them to the next level. And so we started with these design goals. This is actually the partners at Phase 2. Jeff's in the back there, actually wrote these years ago, actually before OpenPublic. He doesn't remember, he denies it, but I have the document history. I know he drafted these. Build an open source CMS for the public sector using what we learned from publishing at OpenPublish. Greg alluded to OpenPublish. It was a Drupal 6 distribution, incredibly popular distribution, huge in the publishing industry. We wanted to do for the public sector what we'd seen there and take everything we learned in the publishing industry and take it over. We wanted to make it easy to meet new OpenGov and transparency standards. And this is something we think OpenPublic has helped with, but this is a really hard problem. And that's one of the reasons we've sort of drifted in beta, because how do you solve this problem of transparency? We wanted to make the best possible tool for building websites. Accessibility, responsive design, these are things that actually the other distros have taken. Lots of other people use OpenOmega. It's released separately. If you want to use the Omega theme or the OpenOmega base theme, you can actually use it without using OpenPublic. So this kind of spearheads our best thinking about how to build websites. Accessibility patches, security updates, all those things. And finally, and this is probably one of the most important things for us, is create a concrete talking point for people to rally around in the public sector. Nikhil had this morning has a lot of other CMSs up on the slides that they went through and talked about. But one of the things that we originally identified was there weren't a lot of people talking about the challenges public sector websites have, state, federal, local, not-for-profits. And they have really interesting problems, really interesting content challenges that they face. One of the things that people always come up to me and things about and talk about is, so I've got 10,000 PDFs that I want to give to the public. How do we do that? And that's a different problem than Thomson Reuters or the AP or other people who do big publishing have. It's a different problem, and it's a whole different domain. And we wanted to actually try and make a conversation point about people could get together and talk about these things and how we were trying to meet those challenges. And I think we succeeded, like I said. Because I was told not to rely on the Wi-Fi, all of my site demo stuff is going to be a video today. So you're going to watching a video I took of a website, which is weirdly meta. And this is OpenPublic today. This is actually our demo site. Some of you may have seen it. You may actually get a chance to look at it at some point. This has got mostly default content in it. It's got a whole bunch of other additional things we see. I wanted to demo the language picker here. This is something we've introduced in the last year. based on our experience. We've got multilingual site ready to go for OpenPublic as a downloadable app. So if you need to produce a site in any number of languages, you can. We have a really exciting announcement today that went out on the PR Newswire. Lingotech just brought their excellent service. Yeah, I'm getting the sign that, yes, it's officially public. Lingotech is bringing their excellent service as a one-click install to OpenPublic. So if you need to integrate with a language translation service and outsource your translations, they have it. I'm going to talk more about that. It's really great. So these are the kinds of things we're building into OpenPublic. These are the kinds of challenges we're seeing, and especially in the last 2 years. Everybody needs, if you're a public sector website, you have people. As Nikhil said, your audience is everybody. You can't say, it's okay to just have an English website. It's okay to just have a website that works on desktop computers. You can't say that anymore. That's not in the mission of government. It's not in the mission of not-for-profits. You want to be able to talk to everybody and get stuff done. So the lessons we learned, and like I said, some of the big goals for OpenPublic that we originally talked about were big goals. Increase transparency, make it easier to build websites. Building websites is hard. If you're walking around today, all these people today at this session and at camps all year long talk about some of the hard challenges we face. And some of the things we learned were, yeah, we had good tools, it's a great distro, it's used on a lot of sites, but we need to make it easier for people to participate in the conversation and the distribution. Like Greg said, we've got great tools at Phase 2 to harvest value from projects, to talk to clients, to find out what their real problems are. We go to these things, and if you're lucky enough to come to a camp session or view one online afterwards, you can kind of participate in that conversation. You can participate maybe on Drupal.org. But we want to get that conversation, make it even easier to participate. We want to make it so you don't need to be a Drupal insider or one of our clients to necessarily have a voice. And we making big strides in that area. We want to make it easier to build multi-sites and platforms and build optional sites. So we want to make it easier to use OpenPublic and not have to fight with OpenPublic. This is something we learned in OpenPublish, and that's why OpenPublic is such a small distribution. We focus as much as we could on like the core 80%. Every public sector website has press releases. Everybody has a blog. Those are safe choices. Does everybody have mapping? Does everybody need multilingual? Those are choices that are optional. We want to make more things optional. We want to make it easier and easier and easier to basically spin up a site and have OpenPublic be a way to see how your site can grow. From your first OpenPublic Drupal website all the way up to a massive enterprise or a platform level website. And then finally, kind of at the other end of the spectrum, we need to make the core of OpenPublic, we need to keep making it smaller because we want to be able to tackle bigger and bigger challenges. And there are a lot of people who can get started with OpenPublic, like Greg said, use it as a template, use it to get started, but then your requirements are going to drift away. You're going to need to build a bigger website, a different website. We want to try and have as many people as we can stay with us and keep talking to us and keep using OpenPublic either for testing or for doing other things or to use it as a champion tool inside their organization. And so we want to tackle these bigger challenges with OpenPublic and make it easier and easier to do that. And one of the ways to do that is to make OpenPublic smaller, more agile, able to dart and go more places. So these are our 1.0 design goals. And a lot of these come from the original. We want to make 80% of the site about 20% of the effort. This still leaves about 80% of the effort on the table. And that's one of the things we've learned when we do all these public sector websites. Not-for-profits, state, local, federal government. Depending on the agency you are, depending on the platform you're building, you've got some unique problems. You've got open data problems. You've got maybe 10,000 PDFs that are press releases. Maybe you have public disclosure requirements. Maybe you have an application you want to integrate with, either a business application or another web application. Those things are actually worth spending your time on. Those things are worth hiring a great firm, having a great in-house team. Those are the things we want people to be able to focus on. That other stuff, press releases, blogs, having an accessible website, having a responsive website, we want to make that stuff as easy as possible so you can get to the stuff that actually has value for the people who visit your website. I said this already, you got this from Nikhil, easier platform builds. We want to make this stuff easier for us because we use it. We also just want to make it easier in general. We hear all the time people who are using OpenPublic and building multi-sites, just like Georgia, on their own, using Acquia, using Pantheon, using whatever. We want to be able to respond to that. We want to make it easy to customize those individual sites. We want to build a mechanism to make it easy to share ideas. And this is kind of a hard thing because ideas on the web aren't just wrapped up in ideas. They're not just wrapped up in blog posts. They're wrapped up in code. They're wrapped up in a user experience. They're wrapped up in a whole lot of things. And we want to figure out what a vehicle is to do that. This was always one of the things we wanted to do with OpenPublic. And we've been moderately successful. But we want to push really hard on that in the next few months and in the coming years, because we think that there's a lot of amazing work going on in the public sector. People come to us like, we did this amazing thing. We're like, we want to tell everybody about that. We want to make this like headline news. This is an amazing thing. We want this to keynote everywhere at every CapitalCamp. But we need to find a way to do that to make it really easy to do. And again, we want instant test drives. One of the things we hear all the time from people, whether or not they use OpenPublic, is, man, OpenPublic was the thing that opened people's eyes in my organization. Nikhil's story speaks to us so much. It's one we hear all the time from clients. Like, we downloaded one of your distros, and we were able to take it to decision makers and be like, look, this is what Drupal is, rather than the white screen with a little blue droplet. Look, it's a website. It's got demo content. Look, we can do stuff. We hear it all the time, and it's so huge for open source, and it's so huge for Drupal. Even if you don't use OpenPublic, we still want that to be really, really easy. We want that to be something that people feel comfortable doing, they know how to do, that can help you in your organization be an advocate for open source and best web design practices. So what's all this mean? We need to appify all the things. Nothing? Not even mean? You guys didn't have enough candy. We want to appify all of the things, and we want to talk about what that means and what that's going to mean for OpenPublic. So right now we're involved in a really big development push. We actually had the Beta 10 blog post and the press release. Greg linked to it. You can go back where I was saying about 9 months ago what we were doing and where we were headed. And we're kind of ready to talk about where we are, because it's taken a lot of work with lots and lots of people to get it done. And you can see this is actually a development server. So none of those are the official icons. You can see Frank, our CTO, Greg. Our developers pick these, I don't, and I would like to say that's how highly they feel about that smiley dog and Frank, our CTO. What we're doing is something we actually betaed, interestingly, on Georgia Gov. And if you go to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, you can see your cases feature. It's a secret stealth app. They actually have the governor and the attorney general actually have secret stealth apps. They've been engineered as apps. They're built in the background. We deploy them with the site and the code and make stuff happen. And you can see, I'm going to pause and go back because my timing wasn't right. You can see if I, go back here. I want to walk through just what we mean when we talk about apps. Because underneath it, these are just regular Drupal modules. All the functionality you're seeing is actually wrapped up on D.O. You can go download it independently. Don't need necessarily OpenPublic. You don't necessarily need to make an app. But it makes this really great experience. We just released this advanced security application for OpenPublic. It was the first feature change in OpenPublic, like really big feature change in quite a while. So I want to go through, just go ahead and install it. This is another one that actually appeared for many of the platforms. We've been working on this for a long time. For those of you who are in the Drupal know, we took password policy 1, and we basically had to re-engineer it because it wasn't ready for FSMA moderate. It didn't do enough things. Great app, or great module, really great functionality, but it needed some other things. And those things were disparate. They were things like not just your password settings, but concurrent logins. If you're a FSMA shop, you know that you want to limit the number of people who can log in on a user account. Potentially just to 1, sometimes to 2. You need to be able to do automatic lockouts, have people be able to reset their periods. You need customizable lockout periods. All of these things for your organization. So we wrapped all this stuff in an app. We built this great little status reporter. It goes to all the modules and tells you what's going on. But all the functionality is out there. But this makes it really easy for people to use and discover and get into OpenPublic. So you can just see, click on Edit Your Settings. This is actually just for logins. I can actually go ahead and crank up my permanent ban thresholds because I'm tired of people forgetting their passwords. Just like that. Super, super easy. One of the other exciting things that's happening, we're gonna fade Alf out here, is we're starting to get one of the things we always wanted, which is conversation about various things. So you can see we've actually got overlapping apps now in OpenPublic. There's OpenPublic Password, and there's OpenPublic Security. 2 different models, 2 different ways to approach the problem. Both of them are really excellent, and you can use both of them. We have the same thing with our own translation app. It's been out for about a year now. Wraps up entity and node translation in a really unique way to get a translatable website. We've also got the LingoTech app now. Big difference is the LingoTech app provides machine translation, provides a service that it can hook up to so you can select to have pieces of your content translated automatically by professional translators. It's really, really cool stuff. And this is part of sharing ideas. This was always part of the app server and what we wanted to do, which is make it really easy for people to see this discrete functionality, all of which has lots of different Drupal pieces underneath it, and say, hey, like, let's talk about whether or not language, content translation, or lingo tag is right for our organization. Let's talk about what our password security requirements are. And let's make it really easy for people to install it and test drive it, one-click install or anywhere. So I want to show this app off a little bit because it's pretty cool. This will be the first official third-party app in the OpenPublic server. One of the things that's most interesting about appifying all the things is we hear all the time from people who build platforms, and we do it all the time ourselves, build boutique app stores. Shouldn't say that because I'm going to get, if Apple's lawyers are listening, app server. Boutique app servers for your platform. People do it. Pantheon does it, Acquia uses these modules, and actually go ahead and get it done. But this is the first time we've actually, for the official OpenPublic server, have gotten somebody who wants to participate and get this out and make it available for everybody to use. So this app, you go ahead and do a one-click install. You sign up for Lingotech services. It's really tiny, so I'm going to have to tell you what you're looking at. You can go ahead and download this, and if you go to their booth, they'll be happy to show you this. But this gives you options. So you add this app to your site, and you can decide which content types you want to have translated. You can decide what level of translation you want, all within Drupal. You can decide which things you're going to send and what priority they should have. Do you want to pay for expedite services? Do you want like stuff translated at a really high level of quality? You can set all that stuff up, and you can set it up automatically and on demand. It's really, really cool stuff. I jumped ahead of myself. So this is a great app, a lot more. We've got security now. We've got all that stuff. We're really starting to build and make ways we think that it's easy to kind of bundle stuff up in the Drupal world and say, this is a solution for the public sector. This is the way we do stuff. So where are we now? 35 minutes, we're not too bad. I talk really fast. Where are we now? We're just going to turn on the faucet? Yeah, pretty much. We really want to start. Greg said OpenPublic 1.0. I put that with air quotes around it. We're pushing this year to get it out. There's this other release, you guys may have heard of it, that we're talking about too right now at Phase 2. That's Open Atrium, really exciting. So that's also going on. But we want to kind of start this conversation in the public sector and make sure we're talking to people about what we're doing, get feedback. We have this Birds of a Feather session right after this session on purpose. Because we want actually people to come and talk to us about the challenges they're facing and what they're doing and things that they've done that maybe could be packaged up and distributed. So that's it, right? We're ready to go. Let's get started. This is where I want to get really technical for 1 second because there's a but here. And this is a but that we've experienced many, many times. Which is if we're going to build on everything in apps, we still have a technical challenge. And that is Eric Summerfield, who could not be here today. He is in Austin, Texas, working on this very thing I'm about to show you right now, which is we want to have apps be able to add functionality to other things. We want the ability to go ahead and let people control where they add it. So when you install an application today, you kind of have some limited options. So if you install the ideation app, which is an app we've had for a really long time, it creates this whole section of your website for ideation. Creates a menu item for you automatically that you can then delete or get rid of. Creates some demo content you can then delete after you figure out how ideation works. It creates a whole bunch of content types. But it doesn't create like any way for you to vote up other things. So if citizens wanted to vote up a document, the ideation app doesn't really do that. You can use it as a template and go ahead and extend things. But it doesn't really make it possible to go ahead and say, I'm installing ideation. I want my citizens or constituents or whoever to be able to vote up any idea on my website, be it a blog post, or a document, or whatever. We don't have that, but now we do. So the thing we're working on, and probably the biggest technical piece for OpenPublic 1.0 that's going to be new, is this thing called features templates. And what we want to do is all the things I just talked about. We want to create a way, if you're building an app and building new functionality in a module, that you can basically say, I want to add that functionality to all the stuff that's already in OpenPublic. This goes back to the 80-20 rule, right? Yeah, I've got blog posts, but I want to be able to like geocode my blog posts so that I know where people are posting from because I work all over the world. Well, you could build that module, you could build that functionality, and now you can actually add it in the OpenPublic blog content type much, much easier. Well, soon. We're testing it right now. We want to be able to add mapping features. We want to be able to add Solr searching. Maybe you're on Acquia and using Solr search. You want to be able to build that functionality and distribute it. we've got a way to do that now. So I kind of want to show this really quickly. This is the OpenPublic. Like I said, this is getting worked on now, so I actually just took this video last night. There's a video, but it's not fake. It's real. This is just a site page content type. This is an OpenPublic site page. If you guys have ever used OpenPublic, a site page is just a really simple content type for, strangely, what ends up being used a lot of the time. It's your about pages. It's your like random page that you don't know where you explain something about your organization. It's not a document or a blog post. It's a press release. It's kind of the bread and butter content a lot of the time on a website. It's the stuff your web team does where you're responding to actual constituent things. I mean, it's huge. If you go to the Georgia platform sites, you'll see they use site page a ton because so much of our content is evergreen content in the public sector. Wired up to a menu, do great things. So if we go in and we, again, you can see our Director of Engineering, CJ there. I actually, San Mateo is one of our clients now, so you're actually seeing the San Mateo build because they're actually, and I'm allowed to publicly talk about them, I think, though don't retweet me. They are going ahead and doing this, and you can see a lovely lighthouse, which I think is appropriate for search. This is a custom application we've written to integrate with Solar Search. And you can see, yeah, your Solar server's set up, and you can go click to go edit it using the standard Drupal stuff. Yeah, you've got default sites. You can see we've turned it on for some content types. So 2 sections. This is the before and after. So go ahead, take a look at this. If I needed to, I could change anything. I could actually run a reindex. Any of you have ever used Solar, you know, it needs to periodically reindex all your content because it's outside of Drupal. Now if I go back to my site page, though, I've got a bunch of search features added to it. So one of the things, this is super cool for them, is a quick search thing. You saw it kind of for Georgia.gov, same idea. I can add a search term. It's indexed by Solar. We use it to do auto-suggest so that as people are browsing or searching on the site, they can come up with stuff. I added this to the content type. I didn't need to alter site page. I could decide where I wanted to add it. I'm ahead in adding this functionality. This content type now not just is going to get, you know, in the regular Drupal search. I've opted for this to go to the Solar index. I've opted for this to go ahead and have these keywords attached to it. I've extended everything. You can see press releases. I added it to that too. So now I can say, you know what, my press releases are kind of good, but maybe that doesn't fit with my content strategy to have those show up in my primary search. We have a do not index flag there. Obviously, you need to have a hosting provider and a Solar server for this, but this is a great example of a service sort of integrating through an app. If I want to, after I install the app, I can go back and say, you know what, I love Solar Search. Solar is awesome. It gives me faceted search. It's so great. It does lots of exciting things. I'm going to go ahead and add it to everything. And I can go ahead and turn it off and on individual content types. If you've worked with OpenPublic and you've had to extend it or build new functionality, this should speak to you in your heart. You should be cheering right now because you've had the pain and suffering of having to override OpenPublic default content. You've had to walk through, redesign the site, do a bunch of special theming and stuff. And now you can actually build new functionality and add it to those content types that are right in OpenPublic. And you might have seen here we've got we're appifying all of the things for real. Oops. Appifying all the things for real. So if you scroll through this list, you can see OpenPublic press release is getting pulled out with Alf there using a typewriter. I love my developers so much. They could not be here today, all of them, but they're fantastic. Search, we've got OpenPublic resources, OpenPublic document. So you can decide which features you want to pull in. Very, very easily. And if you don't want documents, don't want blog posts on your public sector website, you don't need to do that anymore. It's really, really, really good stuff, we think. And it's going to meet one of the things that we've seen the most in OpenPublic in the last 2 years, which is, I love OpenPublic, 90%. This other 10%, I hate so much, I want to go to Phase 2's offices and kick you guys. We do not want you to come kick us. We want to make it really easy. Jeff looked really worried. Don't kick Jeff. We want to make it really easy for you to be able to have pull out content, pull things out, and not have to fight with anything. So, features template. It is coming soon. We're going to have blog posts about the technical details. You can see it is in testing. And I do like to point out, Eric's kind of coy with me about how long it's going to take to get finished. We are in testing now. Our testing team is working with it every day. We're turning stuff off and on. We are really, really excited for this, and as soon as we're ready, we're going to be posting it on D.O and extending it as part of the features universe. For you devs in the room, it'll probably be in a dev state pretty soon, and it'll be available for you guys to look at and start to poke with a stick. So that's kind of where we are. That's kind of the strategy. That's what we're pushing for this year. It's not the most exciting software demo in some ways because not a lot of new features. But we do have features that we think are actually going to make it really, really great for the public sector, really make it much, much easier to actually get our work done, both us and you guys. And hopefully we want to see other people's apps this time next year at CapitalCamp in OpenPublic. And we want to see other people using apps to share the things that they've built with the big public sector community. I'm done now. Some of you that seemed like obligatory applause. Please have more candy. Yeah.
One of the big issues, at least for me, is compliance with open records laws.
Yeah.
Okay, some statutes require affirmative publication of stuff. The federal law now requires if you get X number of requests, it's got to go up in a reading room.
Yep.
How do you deal with that through this platform?
That is a great question. We hope there'll be an app for that. I can tell you some of the custom things we've done. And actually, we were literally just having this conversation actually about some other documents. So one of the things with a lot of documents, archival records or standards for archive is, let's break down the problem you've got, like tracking individual requests for things in your CMS, ideally. A lot of times now people are requesting things via web form. So you're going to be able to track it, associate it, know when you get to that count that record goes up to a higher level. A lot of ways this gets done now is like in other systems and people just post stuff on the website. Some of the ways we've done it is with workflow. Like I mentioned, there was things like ideation app. So if people are like literally, you can have people vote things up as they're requesting them. And then you know when it hits a certain peak that you can do that. We also have a lot of solution. I hadn't personally worked on a federal one with Open Archive yet, where we were doing it in the main system, so I'm telling you stuff I know about. One way we do it is with workflow. So you actually can trigger a special workflow status after a certain amount of activity or after a certain number of requests. And then once you hit that, you can actually have it go to an external system automatically, so you build an API.
But that assumes that the record is already electronic.
That assumes that the record is already electronic. Getting all your stuff in is always, I do not have an easy answer for that. If anybody does have an easy answer for that, please come to the Birds of a Feather.
You're talking about like FOIA requests and
yes.
And
yes.
Yeah. So
open data is wonderful, but open data works for some people and not others.
Yeah. So one challenge is like tying a public-facing system like OpenPublic to a back office type system. So there's glue that exists to do that. Like if you have a document repository like Alfresco, there's something called the CMS API, which allows you to integrate Drupal with an Alfresco-based document repository. So that's set up and tested, and we actually do work in FOIA, but it's more static. It's not tied to a back office workflow-based system, but that's, I think, the type of problem that you have to solve to do that.
Yeah, we're very much hoping that we'll solve that soon. But yeah. Sorry for the non-answer. You can hire us. Other questions?
No other questions? Cool. So it's it's not 8:46. What time is it? 11:46. It's 3 hours behind. Jeff, yeah.
I have a sort of leading question for you guys. If people want to get involved in participating in the project, which is not exclusively a based project,
Yeah.
they write apps or
That is a great question. Thank you. First, if you can, instead of eat lunch, come to the Birds of a Feather. Go to openpublicapp.com. Also, reach out to us. A lot of these apps are now publicly available. To kind of, first of all, my recommendations, if you want to contribute to OpenPublic, first, use it. Go test it. Go use the one-click install on Pantheon. Use it for your family's website. Do whatever you want to, but use it and report things on D.O and talk to people about it. The second thing you can do is, as always, OpenPublic is 100% Drupal. So if you patch a module, if you write documentation for a module, if you contribute back a bug report for a module, you are helping OpenPublic and you are helping the people in the public sector. So please do those things. If you want to build a whole app, first you should start by learning to build a module. Once you know how to build modules, building an app is actually fairly easy. We can walk you through the examples. The source code is commented out. I would actually say the Lingotech guys are here. You should go bug them because they just did it in a couple of days with their module. But essentially, there's a manifest file and some additional resources, and then reach out to us, and we'll take a look and potentially can help out a little bit. So those are kind of the levels of participation. And hopefully you all feel like energized to go do one of those things. If not, please take some extra candy.
Yeah, and Jeff touched on the concept that this is a distribution, obviously, that we built and actively maintain. You saw the team that has hours per week to do this, but it's definitely not a phase 2 exclusive project. Like a lot of times, frankly, there's nothing more we like than getting a call from somebody like Oklahoma City or wherever it may be saying, hey, we want to talk to you about the distro. We're not interested in hiring you. We're going to do it ourselves. We want to use OpenPublic as a distro, and so we'll feed information. So yeah, I mean, it's an effective piece of technology, but a big part of OpenPublic is just to kind of create like a proverbial tent for people to get inside and talk about best practices in government and web content management. So that to me, frankly, that's one of the biggest advantages of OpenPublic, is that it's a concrete embodiment of best practices of web content in government, but also just a way for people to converse, both verbally and via code, as Sean said. So to me, it's like half technology, half community. And one of the things we really want to do is to focus more on the OpenPublic community and getting more people outside to use it. Other people already do, but we want to blow that up. So, any other questions before we do a final wrap up? Yeah, please come to the BOF.
Yeah, we ended on time.
Yeah,
please
we ended
come
right
to the
on
BOF.
time. Yeah.
We ended on time.
So yeah, lunch is right now. Maybe take 15-20 minutes. We'll be down in the grand ballroom. Please, let's extend this conversation there. Thanks.
I think you can stop it.